Hello, hello, La Popular Agave Spirits Club members. Trevor Tyler here, your Commodore of the club, coming to you live. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Really excited this month. We're featuring one of my favorite mezcal producers and quite possibly my favorite mezcal producer that I drink a lot at home, and really excited to share this with you of a small batch private selection that we selected with them. They're called Mal Bien, and we're going to be talking to Andre Kissen, the California market manager for Pueblo de Sabor, who represents Mal Bien and a few other brands. But as always, we do these once a month with our club members. So if it's your first time, kind of just a little bit of run a show. We're going to talk about the club, the perks, and all things Mal Bien this evening. So, again, if this is your first time, welcome. And just a friendly reminder, you do get a lot of great perks as being members of the club. You can go to any of our restaurants and get a 15% dining discount for both food and drinks, priority seating. We have some bottles that are available for you to purchase. And we do host a monthly happy hour for our members, which is the third Thursday of every month from 5 to 7 p.m. And that is when you can start picking up your monthly bottles. If you're not currently a member and you're joining us live, this is a great club if you love agave spirits. We feature a lot of different tequilas. This is our first mezcal that we're featuring. The club's been around for about 5 months, and this is associated with our La Popular restaurants in Claremont, Porter Ranch, and Roseville, where we operate the club. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our website. You can find all the information about the club and how to sign up on our website as well. We operate it through Shopify. And yeah, welcome to the May call for Mal Bien. Without further ado, I'd love to bring up Andre Kissen, the California market manager for Pueblo de Sabor.
Well, thank you, Trevor, and hello, everybody. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Welcome to the call. Do you want to quickly just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, tell us what Pueblo de Sabor is and how you're associated with Mal Bien?
Yeah, for sure. So my name, Andre Kissen, obviously. I've been in the spirits industry for the last 20 years in Los Angeles. Started off as a bartender downtown LA at a spot called Rivera, which had some renown in its heyday. It was one of the first kind of agave distillate programs or focused agave programs in Los Angeles. Back in like 2010 to 2014. We had a lot of notoriety at the time. We got nominated for several James Beard Awards for best bar in the country. And then from there, I decided to jump to the dark side of sales from behind the bar. And I joined the team at Wine Warehouse, which was a distributor in California. And I was managing the spirits portfolio there for about 5 years. But my heart, although I was selling all sorts of different spirits at that point, and I always loved whiskey, scotch, gin, and all kind of different spirits categories, agave was always kind of my heart and soul. I developed a deep passion for it during my time at Rivera and managing that program and studying agave. And I always really enjoyed talking about agave spirits the most. And then following my departure from Wine Warehouse, I worked with a company called Three Badge Beverage, which was the kind of creative force behind Bozal Mezcal and Pasote Tequila and some other agave projects, which I was in charge of on the West Coast. And then eventually my focus nationally for that company. And then when that company sold those brands to another entity, my time was coming to an end with that organization. And my good friend, Ben Scott, who had started this portfolio called Pueblo de Sabor, in which Mal Bien was part of, we kind of contacted each other, and we were always talking about working together because we used to bartend together back in the day, and it's been my friend for a long time. And we'd always talked about working together, and it's just all coincided at that time. And so I started working with Pueblo de Sabor and Mal Bien in February 2025. And just a little kind of background about that company. So, as I mentioned, Ben and I used to bartend together. Back in the day, he was a bartender in Los Angeles, working at several different places. And then we had actually went to Mexico City together back in 2016, I believe. And we were drinking at this mezcaleria called Bosforo, which is an infamous mezcaleria in Centro, Mexico City. And they were featuring all mezcals from this brand called the La Locura that night, distilled by this guy named Eduardo Angeles, who was a famous producer in a town called Minas. And Ben became obsessed, and you could see it on his face. Like, we even saved like the receipt from that night from that mezcal bar. And he declared later that night, after about 13 different mezcals, that he was going to start this import company. And he was going to find Eduardo Angeles in this town, Minas. He was going to track him down. He was going to be the first client in the import company. And I was like, dude, shut up. You're drunk. You're not going to do any of this stuff. And then lo and behold, he, through dogged persistence and several episodes of rejection, he convinced Eduardo to sign up for this import company. And so he created Playable de Sabor with our other friend, Anthony, who became his business partner. And La Locura was the first client. And then down the road, that led to other opportunities, meeting other producers. And then they created Malbien, which became the house brand within the import company. So over the last decade or so, it started off with like grassroots movement in kind of Los Angeles, like spreading, just going from bar to bar and using our bartender connections to build the brand. And then it kind of caught fire, and then they got several great influential accounts in LA, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and it started spreading. To the point to now we're in 26 different markets across the U.S. and one of the most recognized mezcals that's currently imported to the U.S. and available in major cities and poured in some of the best bars around the country. So it's a kind of a labor of love that has a really nice success story thus far.
Awesome. And then you represent there was Tigre is also a brand that you guys represent?
Yeah. So there's also another brand called Tigre, which is a papalote that's coming from Guerrero that is available seasonally as well. So there's 3 brands total within the import company, but Malbien is our house brand, our bread and butter. For sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the background. I do want to get into just a reminder for if you are joining us live from Facebook or YouTube, we are giving away some prizes tonight. We're going to be giving a bottle of the Malbien Green Tape sorry, help me out there. Tequilero Ramos, sorry, gringo over here. And then the Malbien Green Tape Espadín Ramos as well for our second place prize. We'll get into those a little bit later, but if you are interested in, thanks, Andre. If you are interested in winning a prize tonight, go ahead and type a question that you have for Andre into the chat regarding anything Malbien or anything we talk about tonight. We do just ask that you put your name. If you have a different name, if your account you're asking the question from is different than in the name of your membership, we ask that you just clarify what your membership name is so we can make sure we ask questions from members. And we do only give bottles away to members for the winning questions. So a couple great prizes giveaway tonight. Very exciting. So can you tell us a little bit about like the ethos of Malbien? Like, where does the name come from? More specifically, like how do you? I know you talked about the one producer that Ben really was interested in tracking down, but obviously you work with a lot of other producers as well. Talk to me about the name and about how you guys select which producers you work with.
Awesome. So yes, the name Malbien, literal translation is bad good. And there's an old saying when it comes to drinking mezcal that for everything bad and everything good, it's the perfect occasion to drink mezcal. So to celebrate your wins and acknowledge your losses, it's the perfect beverage for that occasion. So kind of the collusion of that of those two factors contributed to naming the brand Malbien. Kind of our ethos and how we came about and kind of what the final product looks like. We get a lot of questions about the appearance of the package and the tape on the bottles. That came to fruition after Ben and Anthony were traveling around central Mexico, meeting different producers and kind of collecting samples. And when you cross the border, either in a car or by plane and you encounter customs and you have a bunch of mezcal in the bag and they potentially can stop you, what you're supposed to do is label each bottle that you have, which may be just a clear plastic bottle or a clear glass bottle, with the producer's name, what the ABV is, where you got it, just a label full of information to kind of cross your T's and dot your I's when you're crossing the border with a sample of mezcal. And so when they had done all this legwork and met all these producers and had a collection of mezcal sitting on their shelf, they were just looking at this wall of different bottles with tape on it and kind of realized that there was a brand story right there. And having experience working behind the bar, you often label stuff with tape, green tape, or in the kitchen, you label stuff with tape. So this package resonated with bartenders right off the bat, saying, "Hey, this is something familiar to me." So that was, a key kind of point to causing some like identification with the brand and the story. So we kind of called ourselves the Green Tape Gang, which is a hashtag that is stuck in a lot of our promotion. But basically, during the early days when Ben signed up Eduardo Angeles to the program, that he's such a legend that kind of lent itself to Ben being able to talk to some other really prominent producers in the area, because they had heard that this guy was working with Lalo, and so that he must be good. He must be a good guy, someone who is in good standing, because Lalo is very selective about who he talks to and who he does business with. And so basically they, traveled around and were able to meet producers in several different areas, primarily Oaxaca. We have 6 in the network now, including work from the Ramos family, who we'll try tonight. And then that kind of expanded into Michoacan, meeting some producers there, and Guerrero. So we're able to import mezcals from 3 different regions and encompassing kind of a wide variety of mezcals. And kind of our philosophy is that we work with everyone in our network. Everyone in our network will have something available constantly around. It may not be the same varietal per se, but kind of Ben always says, like, if you enjoy like a chef's soup of the day, you're gonna like his next special as well. So it's like, if you enjoy the work of one chef, you're gonna like what else he's doing, what else he's cooking up. So we just sign up producers whose work that we really, really like and enjoy, and then continue to support them and develop them and kind of promote them within our network. So we all grow together, basically.
Awesome. Well, I love the story. I mean, I've worked with some chefs where I'd probably get kicked out of the kitchen if I had a tape on the edges like this. But obviously, whose handwriting is it? Is that someone's?
Yeah, this is based after Ben's handwriting, actually.
So, nice. Cool. Well, I think let's take a step back, because we have, like I said, this is the 5th month we've been doing the club. Up to this point, we've only featured tequila. So it was great to learn about the ethos of the company. But I'd like to give maybe just an introductory kind of differences between, like, speak to me like I don't know what mezcal is. Like, how would you describe mezcal to somebody that's never had it before? And then how would you kind of obviously what I think most people immediately think of, and when we talk about trainings in our restaurants, is like trying to get past the perception of all mezcal is it's just smoky tequila, right? That's like the really generic, like what most people, I'd say what the majority of the population thinks of it. So can you talk to us a little bit about how mezcal differs from tequila production? And then why is it so much more than just a smoky spirit?
Gotcha. So kind of backing way up, mezcal is the first distilled spirit in North America. So has the longest legacy of distillation, dating over 400 years ago, and even has traces to kind of pre-Columbian history. So it has that kind of historical factor to it. And then kind of tequila was a type of mezcal, classified as a type of mezcal back in the day. So the broader definition of mezcal is agave-based distillate, which encompass tequila. Tequila is from one particular or several different states in Mexico, I think 4 total, but primarily Jalisco. and is derived from one agave called Blue Weber. So it's from a particular place, but is only a product of one agave. Mezcal, on the other hand, can be from many different states in Mexico. There are 10 currently in the denomination of origin by the CRM, or dictated by the CRM, which is the governing body which dictates what goes on the bottle of mezcal, which we don't necessarily adhere to, but that's another aside. So mezcal can come from multiple different states and come from multiple different agaves. And the way I think the best analogy to approach mezcal and start to understand the vastness of it is to think of it more like wine, where mezcal is comprised of multiple different varietals, just like wine is comprised of different grapes. So there can be mezcals for different occasions, different pairings, different occasions, just like you would drink a Chardonnay with a salmon. You can drink like an espadín or a tobola or a topaziche with a particular dish that you like. So mezcal offers the opportunity for multiple pairings with food, and there's kind of just more diversity. So kind of in synopsis, say, the history of mezcal is a lot longer than tequila. There's more diversity in terms of the varietal expression. And then there's just geographic differences of where they're from. And then furthermore, the production style is vastly different. So mezcal has a more, definitely more kind of a traditional process. Well, tequila has become more modernized and kind of more built for speed as it's become such a popular export. And the U.S. market is such a massive consumer of it. Mezcal is often, or at least the producers that we work with, is made by farmers basically in very smaller, quaint environments with stills that are probably the quarter size of your kitchen. Well, tequila is more of an industrial process, and the agaves themselves are often cooked or steamed in ovens, or cooked in ovens or steamed in these massive like washing machine things that look like they're called autoclaves, which is more an industrial process. And then with mezcal, the agaves are actually cooked in the earth in a pit, often lined with rocks, and which includes wood. And so it's a longer process, and that's where the smoke is imparted into the process. However, depending from distillate to distillate and agave to agave, the level of smoke will always differ. And especially from producer to producer, the level of smoke in agave distillates will always differ. And you'll taste plenty of mezcals that have no smoke whatsoever. And I think the mezcal that you'll try tonight, I get very little smoke at all off of it.
Yeah, no, it's not very much at all.
And so smoke in general in mezcal is, by a mezcalero, is often considered a flaw. It's used kind of as like a masking agent if there's like a problem with the distillate, or or for something that's done very quickly. Certain agaves also kind of impart more smoke to them during the cook due to the density of the fibers within them. But smoke is not like the desired outcome when it comes to mezcal production. Like the producer doesn't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to make the smokiest mezcal I can today. Like that's not their general mission statement. The mission is to feature the notes of the agave that have been in their fields for sometimes 10 to 15 to 25 years. So mezcaleros are basically farmers, and they express deep love and consideration for the plants in the field. And so they want to have their final distillate, if as their liquid art, as some people call it, is the expression of the agave in the glass. That's the final end result. They want the agave to shine, and smoke is just part of the process, but it's not the goal.
Laura, do you mind? Laura helps run the back end of things. Can you share my screen that I'm sharing? Is that possible? Thank you. Can you talk to us a little bit about the copper alembic, the refrescadera here?
Absolutely. So this is an example of a mezcal still. So there are generally two types of stills in the world. There are columns and there are pots. Many of your favorite vodkas and gins and whiskeys are made in column, and some whiskeys are made in pots. And tequila, by and large, is made in pots. But this is an example of a mezcal still. You can see it's quite small, but contains many different elements. And this is the exterior view of it. But you can see that at the kind of the core, there's the heating element, and then the inside that brick area is where the fermented mash is. And so heat rises through the mash, it gets collected. It's called the lin arm at the top. But first, it rises through this pot, or this the montera, which is kind of the copper head, which is surrounded by this metal jacket called the refrescadera, which is a particular type of method that Victor Ramos uses in order to cause more reflux in the still and get kind of a more, which results in a very kind of more clean, viscous distillate. So this is a special method that this producer uses, whose mezcal we're about to try, uses, and it's very common in this particular area of Michoacán, Oaxaca, to use this technique. So.
Awesome. And then before we get into it, I do want to just share, everyone this month received, Laura, if you can pull my screen up again, I'm sorry. This is something that I think is phenomenal that you guys developed. And I, when I was first learning about mezcal, which wasn't too long ago, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. This was something someone showed me pretty early on, and we use it a lot, not only for mezcal, but any agave spirits. Training wise, every one of our members received this wheel in their bags this month. Can you kind of run us through how this was developed and the best way to use it for someone not just drinking mezcal, but drinking any agave spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I think this came about because Ben had undergone, I think, as bartenders up and coming, we sat through so many trainings and gone through so many tastings, from watching other people do it and seeing kind of similar things and kind of developing our own opinions on flavor profiles. And so, with that in mind, I think we wanted kind of like a fun, evocative tool to use during our staff trainings that, would be a conversation starter and something that was memorable. So you can kind of break down, flavor into different perspectives. You can see there's broad categories like, something perceived as sweet, woody, or fruit forward. And then you can kind of extrapolate that to different.
So you want to start in the middle here, right?
Yep,
just to clarify, this is where you want to start. So, taste it. And then if you taste any of these words, then you're going to branch out, right?
Exactly. So you kind of work your way out. And it's always like, sometimes when you taste things, you get stuck on the first thing that you notice. So it's important this is just kind of a good tool to pick up notes that you wouldn't otherwise have recognized because you'd be stuck on the first thing. There's I think one of the best psalms I had ever worked with always was like, hey, if you taste the first thing and you write that note down, forget about it, throw it away, because you're just going to keep tasting that one. You have to approach it from a new perspective. So this is a good tool just to kind of guide your own journey as you pick up different notes, and it gets pretty complex. And there's some fun, very specific things that we threw on there that are surprising.
I do want to call this out. This is one of my favorite things. It says, not to shame anybody, but this is something I always say during a tasting. Excuse my lack of Adobe Acrobat skills.
Yeah.
But it says here, everyone's palate is different and there's no wrong answer except for Smooth. Smooth is a hit song by Santana featuring Rob Thomas, but it's not a good tasting note. So
yeah,
first of all, it's hilarious. But second of all, I agree. I mean, I don't know what smooth tastes like. So I think that's if you use the word smooth, I'm not trying to shame you, but maybe use this wheel to expand your verbiage when it comes to describing tasting notes.
Exactly. Eliminate the word smooth from your vocabulary when describing a spirit, because smooth is not a tasting note. I mean, you may have something may have the perception of being like easy drinking or, have a certain textural element to it, but that's not the tasting note. That's something completely different. So if you go beyond just calling something smooth, you'll find that you are, examining why you're enjoying something at another level. And then you can start kind of paying attention and recalling things, and then that's when you really get good, and then you can start blind tasting different stuff. And so the more you practice, the more you taste, the better you're going to get at it. The better you're going to get at like picking up notes and then recalling it. So this is kind of just a fun tool to help you on that journey. And I can't stress enough that, tasting is at the end of the day a very subjective sense. So a lot of you are going to find different qualities or things from different distillates or wines or beers or anything that you might enjoy. But this is just, throwing a bunch of ideas out there to kind of to be able to recognize, and it's a good guide on your journey.
Awesome. Laura, I think you can hide my screen. Thank you so much. So let's get into, we've talked about, the ethos of Malbien, why you guys started the company, talked about the just mezcal kind of basics, and then the flavor wheel here, which I think is an amazing tool, and the production element. So let's dive into this specific one that we selected. Can you tell us something, like we talked about the types of agave being like wine varietals. Yes. Tequila uses Blue Weber agave. It has to use Blue Weber agave to be called tequila. But mezcal can really use anything agave-wise other than Blue Weber agave. Talk to us about Tobala. Talk to us about that specific varietal. Maybe some fun facts or flavor profiles associated with that. But what is Tobala?
So Tobala is a really kind of fun agave, and I'm really kind of glad you picked this one because it's one that's really kind of interesting and complex in many ways. But Tobala is often described, is referred to as the king of agave, which is kind of funny because it's really small in terms of in comparison to other varietals, like Espadin, for example, which is by far the most popular one in terms of the quantity of it being exported, is a very large plant. The piña, or the core of the plant, can weigh up to 250, 300 pounds. It's just massive. There are agaves like Orequeño, which are even bigger, that can get up to 300, 400 pounds. Just really massive plants. But Tobala is just a little guy. And it's almost like it can be as small as a little pineapple. I've actually, juggled them when I've been in Oaxaca before. They can.
You juggled the piñas?
Yeah, you can. They can be very small, and they often thrive in the wild in the shade. So they're known as like very singular plants that grow in the shade, and they're very because due to their size, it takes a lot of them to create a high yield for a distillate. So they're often known as being a pain in the ass to distill, because especially if you're finding them in the wild, and they grow in the side of the mountain in the shade. You have to, you're taking your donkey and a trailer up the mountain and filling your trailer full of Tobala and taking it back. It's a laborious process, and I can't stress enough how difficult it is to make this stuff. And Tobala is a very difficult agave just because the size of it and the yield. Having said that, there are cultivated batches of Tobala which are delicious, which is much easier to cultivate now or farm, because it's all going to be right there and it's easy to collect. But in the example of this batch, which is actually a wild Tobala, it's very difficult. And so some kind of like flavor profile notes that I often get from Tobala. It has definitely more of like a sweeter note, almost like I always kind of get like a hickory barbecue kind of note from Tobala. There's like a sweetness to it, very specific sweetness that some people really prize. So I know a lot of mezcal aficionados who have the opinion that Tobala is among their favorites of agaves. And if I'm doing a tasting and there's a Tobala on the table, often people gravitate towards it because not only is it one of the most prized agaves, but it's also kind of one of the more recognizable varietals. And it's a fun one. It was actually a great pick. So.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So I think most people that are somewhat familiar with mezcal most likely have had Espadin. why, and I know this, you know this, but like, why is Espadín so much more common than varietals like Tobola, Araqueño, Tapasiche, whatever? Like, why does Espadín dominate the mezcal market?
Yeah, so it's mainly because it's easy to grow and there's a high yield of distillate due to the very sugar-rich nature of the core. So it's the agave that is by far most common. And if you are, belling up to a bar in the United States and you order a mezcal margarita, like 99% chance that someone is going to pour you an Espadín, a mezcal Espadín in the glass in that cocktail. It's just because that it lends itself to cultivation. It's the easiest one to grow, and the agave is very large and sugar rich, so there's a high yield of distillate. So you get a lot of liquid for your effort when it comes to Espadín. Having said that, Espadín can get a bad rap as being just kind of a lower level, kind of entry level, cheaper or a poor quality just because it's inexpensive or because it's cultivated. But some of the best mezcals I've ever had in my life have been Espadíns too. So don't paint it or box it into a corner. It can be just as delicious as any other varietal.
Awesome. What would you say your favorite varietal is?
That can change by the day, by the what the weather's like. That's what talking about mezcal and the variety of it. That's kind of the beauty, because there's something for different occasion. There's something for every meal you're enjoying, or for every course you're enjoying, for that matter. One of my favorite varietals, I would have to say, is Madrequiche or Topasiche. There's this family of agaves called Karwinskis, which tend to be very kind of bright, herbaceous, and very floral, which is a completely different flavor profile than the Tobolas or Espadines, which I tend to gravitate towards personally. But like I said, I have an embarrassment of riches in my closet from all the mezcal I've collected over the years, and anyone can be the perfect solution for a bad day or good day.
Awesome. Well, let's get into tasting this one. I know you have it, and so do I. So this is the Malbien La Popular Agave Spirits Club selection. This is a Victor and Emmanuel Ramos Tobola. So one thing worth noting is, most tequila is bottled in the U.S. at 80 proof, 40% alcohol. In Mexico, it's bottled slightly lower at 76 proof. But this mezcal and many mezcals come in at a higher proof. So we're actually coming at 47% here, or 94 proof. So it is maybe going to be a little bit hotter if you're used to drinking tequila. But I get the sweetness that you were talking about earlier. Like, I almost get the smokiness is going to be there based off of the preparation and the cooking method of the agave with cooking it in the hornos underground. But the smoke is such a small piece of this. I get these amazing citrus oils and almost like this berry fruit leather on the palate that is just awesome. And then the like kind of makes my tongue dance a little bit on the end. Like, I get like this tingly sensation on the end. But I mean, what do you get from this, Andre? Can you talk to us about your?
I think you nailed it with like that fruit leather. I always get almost like a date fruit roll up kind of thing. A lot of kind of on the nose. You always kind of, you're trained to do this like nose palate finish kind of breakdown of it. But on the nose, I get like green apple and jasmine tea. Some kind of a bright greenness to it, maybe like almost some eucalyptus as well. There's definitely like a kind of a light fruit note to it, and then kind of on the palate.
Yeah, I get a little sage on the nose as well.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good pull. Definitely like a green herbaceous note.
Yeah.
And then I get more kind of the character, like roasted agave, tobola sweetness, like hickory thing that really coats the palate.
Yeah, when you said that hickory barbecue, like That's what I love about tasting with other people, because you can look, and this agave wheel is so helpful because it guides you as well. But being able to, and I've said this before on these calls and on our whiskey club calls, like sometimes you taste something and you just can't put your finger on it, and then someone else says it, and then you said hickory barbecue, and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm tasting. Like,
that's 100% part of the fun, is tasting together and calling out these different things, and then you say something, and then that's interesting. Instantly going to register something in my brain, maybe something that I couldn't exactly pinpoint at the time. So just kind of the tasting shared experience is really part of the fun thing about mezcal, and tasting anything in general. But mezcal, the flavors are so kaleidoscopic. There's so many different ways you can go. So always tasting like in a group setting to compare notes is really fun and beneficial with mezcal in particular.
I think mezcal obviously has grown immensely in popularity over the past 5 to 7 years, but I still think overwhelming majority of people, at least in the U.S., gravitate more toward tequila. Is there something that you have seen success with in converting tequila drinkers over to mezcal drinkers? And if so, what is it?
It's usually just starting with a cocktail. I think once you start drinking mezcal margaritas, I think it's hard to go back just to the regular, just tequila margarita. And all you're really tasting, those, in my opinion, is like the quality of the lime juice and the agave nectar at that point. And mezcal just has so much more complexity to it. I like tequila as much as the next guy too, and I'll always have love for it, but it can never be as complex or dynamic, as interesting and vast as mezcal is. Just mezcal, as I mentioned, is like wine in its category. You can keep studying and learning, and even going down into mezcal producing regions and meeting the people that do it, and you just always feel like there's so much more to learn about it. It's just once you kind of go down the mezcal rabbit hole, it's hard to climb out of it, I'd say. So always kind of starting off with the cocktail and then kind of branching out from there. I would say if you're just analyze like a good kind of through line through just tasting spirits raw, like some brighter varietals, like some of the Karwinskis, like the ones I mentioned, like like the Tobasiches or Madriquiches, which tend to be like not smoky at all, are often surprising to people that never had kind of a mezcal beyond maybe just the house Espadin, which was a super like a smoke bomb that was they recoiled when they think of that memory. So kind of taste some mezcals that are outside of that kind of that smoky umbrella, and just branching out and tasting more and kind of being open-minded, I think. And then once you start that journey, it's like you never go back.
And then I know that the supply of agave has been a hot topic recently in the past couple of years. What challenges do you see that exist with the sustainability of agave production, and kind of what is Malbien doing, or what's your take on the sustainability of the industry at the moment?
Yeah, so the popularity of mezcal has been both mal and bien, good and bad, in several different ways. There are always producers who are going after more quantity, more money, more we want more faster now, which is not how agave spirits work. Unfortunately, they take a lot of time to grow and develop and do properly. And if you are producing things too quickly, or are ripping agaves out before they're ready, or just kind of depleting fields too quickly without replanting them, and not growing at an appropriate scale that facilitates replenishment of the fields and the plants and the agriculture, you're putting the whole category at risk, and it's kind of a negative thing. So as mezcal becomes more popular and bigger or corporate conglomerates get involved, unfortunately, it's inevitable that the supply will follow the growing demand, and there will be producers doing things in a nefarious fashion in perspective of the environmental sustainability of everything. However, kind of what we do and what we seek out partners that just have a professed love for mezcal and the plants and the agriculture in general. And so they're by nature and the adherence to the tradition of their families are doing things that are in a sustainable fashion and always replanting agaves and rotating crops and with an eye towards seasonality and what's coming next. I think like I kind of mentioned earlier, that we don't have like regular varietals available from all our producers at the same time, because there's a lot of mezcal brands that say we'll always have this varietal, we'll always have a Tepestate from this guy, we'll always have Tobaziche from this guy, we'll always have a Tobola from this guy around. But that's really not how agriculture works, because it's always going to fluctuate. So we'll have something that's seasonally available for one producer that's right for that particular time. So it's rotating, and it's not, we're not forcing nature to fit the economic need. We're allowing nature to run its course, and then we bottle what's available. So that's kind of our philosophy. And then, this, what we're trying this Tobo, this is, one example of a wild agave, or a batch of wild agave that we sourced, which is actually pretty rare in our collection, because we generally like to work with producers and that are doing more that distill cultivated agave, that are farmers that are growing, because that's a way to kind of control the sustainability factor of it and make sure that plants are being replanted and replenished. Because if you're just cultivating wild agave in the field and just pillaging it, going through it and not replanting anything, and not, it's, that can be bad too. So it's a complicated question with a complicated answer, but I hope that.
No, yeah, we appreciate you shedding some light on it. Shoot, I had something and then I lost it. So just a reminder, if you're watching, if you're a member, you're watching live, if you want to throw in some questions, we will ask Andre some questions here at the end of this call. Andre, you want to talk about? Shoot, I had something and then I lost it. But okay, I remember what I was going to say. I know you guys have done a lot. I don't think I've ever seen a pechuga from Albion. Is that something you guys have done, or is that something you're looking at doing, or maybe I just haven't seen it before?
So yeah, so for those of you who are unaware, pechuga is a style.
Yeah, sorry. Tell me what a pechuga is.
Yeah, of course. So pechuga is a category of mezcal defined as a mezcal that's distilled with X. It could be like, X can be most commonly an animal protein like chicken breast or turkey breast or lamb or iguana, or, trout, rattlesnake. We've had all different types of animal proteins, but typically it's a protein associated with the predominant protein source of a particular village. So if there is a village that farms lamb, they make a pechuga with lamb, or if it's a chicken town, they make chicken breast pechuga, or turkey, vice versa, or on and on. And typically it's where they do it. If you remember the drawing of the still, they take that Montera cap off and they have a basket with basically the offering, with, it can be fruits or the animal protein together, and then the vapors pass through the basket and encapsulate the essence of the fruit and the notes of the animal. It's basically the same way you make a gin. It's vapor distillation, but with an animal and fruit. And can be herbs as well. So it's basically like,
it's often made for like special occasions, right?
Yes. So commonly it's made for special occasions, like a wedding or a birth, Christmas, and the tradition of it is kind of is debated a lot. Some people are of mind that because Del Maguey was the first one to market one in the country, and they came out with a pechuga, and it kind of is way more expensive than everything else. They kind of set a very high bar for kind of what the U.S. market interpreted as what a pechuga was. So it's often viewed from that perspective as something that's more high end than other stuff. But from our perspective, the agaves are more of the superstar in our portfolio, and kind of you get a great degree of complexity from just the agriculture itself and the notes of the agave. So you don't necessarily need all that other stuff to make an interesting, complex distillate. So we generally don't bottle pechugas because we want to showcase the agaves themselves. But we have done some in the past for special circumstances or private batches. And then we actually do have one in our lineup that's technically a pechuga called the Zacate Limon, which is an espadín that's distilled with lemongrass, which is
yeah, that's right.
So that is technically a pechuga because they take lemongrass and they place in the still, and it's distilled with lemongrass. So it's a mezcal that's distilled with a flavoring component, which is a pechuga. This one, there's no animals harmed in this process, and it's quite delicious and light and really fun for cocktails and just sipping on its own. So while pechugas and other mezcal collections are often the most expensive thing in the whole portfolio, ours is actually the most affordable thing in our portfolio. So we kind of flip it on its head.
Got it. Cool. Let's. We got a couple questions from the audience that I want to get to, but as always, I always love anytime you're out, you're like drinking with friends or family. There's always music on in the background, and this is something we've always done with our whiskey club, and we've started to do, and we're building this playlist. We always ask our guests, what are some songs that remind you or make you think of either drinking mezcal in general or specifically drinking Malbien? So I have your choices here, but I don't know if you remember them. I'm happy to remind you. And you want me to tell you, or you remember them?
I remember them. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your songs and why you chose them.
Cool. So the first one I selected just came to mind right away. Is one of my, probably if I did like a Spotify Wrapped for my whole life, this would be in the top 5, which is People of the Sun by Rage Against the Machine. The first concert I went to when I was like in I think 7th grade
time.
I grew up in town, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Rage Against the Machine was coming to town, and I'll always remember like when that first riff from the song came on, they said, "We're Rage Against the Machine from Los Angeles," and this huge just rush came over the crowd, and that was just like a similar moment for me. But how that relates to the mezcal is that mezcal, this mezcal is just really exciting by nature, and drinking mezcal is always like an exciting moment. So it's always like provides this big rush of enjoyment for me. And then the Rage Against the Machine, of course, is a very group that's entrenched in politics and rebellion and protest. And if you ever tried to travel in Oaxaca, it's your plan A often isn't going to work out because there's protests all over the place, everywhere. So if you try and visit some producer, you might encounter a roadblock of protesters, and you have to find another route. And that's something actually that Ben and Anthony encountered during their first trip to Oaxaca. They were trying to get back to town from a long day out visiting producers, and they encountered a big protest in field, and they had to take the long way around, and it's a good story. If you ever have a chance to have a drink with them and talk about it, it gets pretty hairy, but they're just it's a community that is always protesting about something. So this group and that song came to mind. And then People of the Sun, these mezcaleros spend a lot of time in the sun, and they work extremely hard. They're the hardest workers that I've ever seen or met in my life. These agaves are incredibly heavy and hard to work with, and just the mezcal production is extremely labor oriented, and you have nothing but respect for how hard these people work in the hot sun all day.
Awesome. No, I love the choices. That's great, and I'm a huge Rage fan, so
hell yeah,
I like it.
Second song.
Yeah, sorry. I thought. Go ahead. My apologies. Yeah.
The second song was also another. I wanted to keep it East LA, so another East LA band is Los Lobos, and the song is Just a Man. And then it's kind of, for me personally, it represents kind of a generational divide to it. Victor has, he's the third generation mescalero, and he at age 5, his job was to stoke the fire in the still, and now it's his grandson's job today. And then his son Victor also does some of the distillation, so it's a generational thing. And Rage Against the Machine was influenced by Los Lobos, and then there's a generational thing as well going on there. And then that song, Just a Man, is just a great drinking song too. It's very layered, has lots of elements, and then it has a really awesome guitar solo about 3 minutes in. I feel like mezcal is often like a guitar solo. There's all these different elements to it. It can be pretty complex. It's a journey, and then there are different elements when you're listening to a guitar solo. There's different things that you hear every time, and then when you're tasting a mezcal, there are different notes that you'll pick up every time. So they're kind of similar journeys in that respect.
Awesome, great song choices. We're still compiling all our list. Hopefully next month we'll officially release the playlist and add the first 12 songs. Every month we ask our guests to pick 2 songs, so we'll have 12 songs. We'll probably release the playlist next month. Okay, a couple questions from the audience here. Christian, who I believe CeeLo is a member of our Claremont location, he wants to know, and I think Christian may have had a mezcal or two, because I'm gonna he says, would you recommend drinking mezcal straight, or is it better on ice? I know a lot of spirits open up better on ice. How do you think mezcal on ice is compared to drinking it neat?
So generally, mezcal is usually neat at room temperature, whatever, the temperature of whatever room you're in. In Oaxaca, they'll never ask you if you want ice in it. It's more of a thing with whiskey to kind of unlock some more character with an ice cube or not. But traditionally, mezcal is never like the stuff that's not in a cocktail. If you're just sipping mezcal to get a note out of it, or a flavor experience that's centered around the mezcal itself, it's neat. That you can pair different things with it, like orange slices or worm salts, which you'll often find served traditionally in mezcal bars as kind of a palate cleanser. But neat, by and large, is how mezcal is consumed.
Awesome. And then one other question we had from Matthew Cisneros, and this was coming from, I can't see it through this, what we're looking through, but I can see it on this other platform. He says, how does the age of the agave impact the flavor in the mezcal?
So different agaves age at different rates and are ready at different junctures, but that's part of the acumen and knowledge of the farmer or mescalero comes into play when deciding when a mezcal is ready for production. There are certain indicators, but basically mezcals, or an agave plant, spends its whole life gathering enough sugar to sprout its quiote once. And so a good indicator of an agave being ready is when that quiote is about to sprout, because the core itself is as sugar rich as it's going to get, and that's going to lend itself to the best quality distillate. So it's really variant. I mean, if you pick a mezcal or you're distilling an agave plant before it's ready, it can be maybe overly bitter, not having enough sweetness to it. You're going to get less distillate out of it, and that you may cook that a little bit longer to impart more smoke to cover that up. So good mezcals or that are most expressive of the nature of the agave are dependent on time and place and varietal.
Awesome. All right, well, those were the only 2 questions we had come in. So I want to thank you for your time, Andre. Since there's only 2 questions, we only have 2 prizes. So I'm going to go ahead and give the, I think a lot of people here are learning about mezcal for the first time. So I think the question about drinking it on ice or drinking it without is is a great question. So we're going to give the first place prize to Christian, and then the second place prize we'll give to Matthew. So
Awesome.
We'll get those prizes out to you. But Andre, thank you for the time. Thank you for the education. We send this video out to all our members, so we'll probably get a lot of people watching this secondhand. But thank you very much. And please, if you enjoyed the Malbien, this is a product that we have available at both our Eureka restaurants and our La Popular restaurants. So go enjoy some. I love this one, but we do have the Alto at La Popular, which is also a phenomenal product. If you like this and want to try something else, go to a La Popular and drink some Alto because I like that one a lot.
Yeah, exactly. The more you taste, the more you get to experience and get to know the category a bit better, the more you get out of it. So get out there and explore.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Andre. Have a good night. We appreciate the time.